Welcome to Tactical Talk. This is Zain Khan. Today we will be discussing another false flag by India, the URI attack, which is such a shady incident that it raises eyebrows across the globe. To discuss this topic, we have with us today Brigadier Asif Haroon. But before we get to Brigadier Asif Haroon, who's a senior analyst and also a geopolitical commentator, let me give you a little brief history on previous Indian false flag operations within their own country where they blamed it on Pakistan. The first is, as you can see on your screen, hijacking of Indian Ganga plane 1971. Raw officer R.K. Yarev accepted proudly that the Indian intelligence was behind the hijacking. The second false flag, as you can see on your screens again, India blamed Pakistan for the massacre of 6 in Chitti, Sangora, Kashmir in 2000. Lieutenant General of the Indian Army, Kartar Singh Gill, thoroughly investigated the case and said it was an inside job. Third Indian false flag, again you can see on your screen the images destroying the so-called terror boat. Indian media showed a fake picture of 200 militants waiting to infiltrate India. Here you can see in the picture again that the Indian DIG who lied about destroying the boat could face court-martial. Now let's get back to the show. We have with us today Brigadier Asif Haroon, a senior analyst and also a geopolitical commentator. We just briefed you on the past history of Indian false flags. Welcome to our show, Brigadier Asif Haroon. This is Zain Khan. It's a pleasure to have you on Tactical Talk.
Thank you very much, Zain Khan.
Brigadier Saab, let's get to the first question. I've just explained in my introduction the brief history of Indian false flag operations within their own country where they blame it on Pakistan. My first question to you is, India has made a big issue out of the URI attack on September 18th and is blaming Pakistan. What impelled India to stage the URI type attack? And that too just before the UNGA session in New York. Can you let the viewers know India's compulsion?
Well, then we have to quickly look back as to what were the circumstances prevailing at the time of the URI attack, as you said that it was on the 18th of September. The first thing was that the situation inside the occupied Kashmir had become very explosive. And why it had become explosive was as a result of the martyrdom of Burhan Wani on 8th July. And from there on till today, the uprising is, gathering momentum, and it has not gone down ever since. And that was one thing. Now, the interesting thing was that India, as it has always been doing in case of all the uprisings, that it uses force. And this time again, it used excessive force against unarmed protesters. There were no arms. Most of the protesters were the young people, the teenagers, the women and the children. They were there in the protest, but they used, the live guns, and then they brought in a new form of weapon called the pellet guns, and then the chili guns, and they blinded dozens and dozens, over 100 have been blinded. So that was another thing, but the uprising continued despite that kind of an atrocity. And then what interesting phenomena which came out of it was the love and affection for Pakistan and the hatred for India by the Kashmiris. And this could be seen by the chanting of the slogans, Pakistan Zindabad, the waving of the Pakistan flag, and down with India and Azadi from India. Those were the slogans heard throughout the Kashmir Valley. This was phenomenal, which in fact flabbergasted India and the Indian leadership in particular. Now, this made an impact on the international audience and the world bodies for the first time. And the main thing was the use of the pellet guns. and the children and the men and the girls getting blinded or injured as a result of the pellet guns. Even the saner elements within India had started to question the policy of Modi, his extremist policy, and the Kashmir policy. And then, out of sheer frustration, if you remember that when 14th August was celebrated with great fervor in occupied Kashmir on the 15th August, which is the Independence Day of India, Modi said, he talked about Balochistan and Azad Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan, trying to equate these areas of Pakistan with the occupied Kashmir. And you know how badly it backfired when the people of these regions got out on the streets and just, started raising anti-India slogan, burning the effigy of Modi and Pakistan, Zindabad and all that. So that, badly failed, badly misfired. Now, when these things were happening, what other interesting thing happened was a change which came was the Pakistan stance. It started following a proactive policy. It launched a diplomatic offensive in support of the Kashmiris. This, further flabbergasted India that what Pakistan is behaving, because till this time they were doing all sorts of things and hiding things, and Pakistan was not picking up courage to say what was happening there, not exposing the ugly face of India. And then the most pressing thing was the next session, which was coming, United Nations General Assembly on 21st September, and he beforehand saying that he will be talking about the atrocities in occupied Kashmir and the right of self-determination for the Kashmiris, and he will talk, and this thing was also talked by most of the people here and the leaders. Now India had to build a counter narrative, how to diffuse the movement there in Kashmir, and then how to reign in Pakistan, and also build their own narrative to put Pakistan on the defensive. So these were the compulsions, and based on which then they went in for another false flag operation. And as you know, that the most attractive card with India is the card of terrorism, which it has been playing since 2001. And if you recall, 2001 Parliament attack was a false flag operation with definite objective. Then the 2008 Mumbai attacks was another with definite objective, and then the Pathankot, and now the Uri Court was the latest. Now, this is one chain of events which I've tried to explain to link it with the Uri attack. And I will give you another linkage to the Uri attack. I will make a reference to India Times newspaper report appearing in June 2016, in which they had given a full-fledged story that the BJP government wanted their Home Minister Rajnath Singh to become the Chief Minister of the UP. And for that, India is planning to carry out a false flag operation in occupied Kashmir, blaming Pakistan, and then successfully quashing that so as to raise the stature of this Home Minister, and then making him a victorious candidate for the next election. So that was another thing. So these were the events which were going on in those periods which led to the Uri attack.
Brigadier Asif Haroon, the second question arises. Many Indians themselves questioned the authenticity of the URI attack. Can you please name some questions and doubts that come up while observing the Indian narrative on the URI attack?
Well, Khan, India is very fond of carrying out false flag operation, but somehow the ones who stage the false flag operation, they are not apt in it. They always have been leaving behind glaring loopholes and that, that is why no story of theirs has ever stood the test of time. It happened in each case. That's a different matter that, they hanged Afzal Guru after 2001 with false flag operation on parliament, and then the Ajmal Kasab as a result of 2008, and since then, they're standing on one leg and talking of Mumbai again and again. But then, we had the small false flag operation in the form of terror boat along the Gujarat coast, and then the Udhampur and the Gurdaspur, and then the Pathankot. And in each case, you would see that all these so-called terrorists, they were killed. Not a single one was captured alive in injured form or in normal form. And so there was nothing to prove on ground, and neither they have been able to provide any clinching evidence of the past operations like the Mumbai attack and all that. Now coming on to the URI, this is again, a very cockeyed kind of an operation that had been planned. Now, what I had explained before, the circumstances and all that, so leaving aside, their story reads that 4 terrorists, they hopped over from West Punjab into Baramulla district, then went into this URI Tehsil of Baramulla district, where this 12 brigade is deployed. An operational brigade is deployed there in a very sensitive area, close to Pakistan. And in these 4 terrorists, very easily go straight, head for the brigade headquarters of 12 brigade, and then carry out their terrorist attack and manage to kill 18 soldiers of their regiment, 10 Gorkha regiment or something of that, and then these 4 are killed there. So this is the narrative of theirs with regard to, they were carrying Pakistani origin weapons, and they were carrying the rocket grade launcher that had the marking, the SIM had the Pakistani SIM, all that and all that, and as if all these people had gone there to get killed and leave behind all the conclusive evidence which India had wanted in their pockets. So this is one thing. Secondly, hypothetically, if we say, that these Johnnies had managed to cross there, how they had managed to cross? Because the line of control and the working boundary has been so extensively and thoroughly barricaded with the help of the barbed wire, which is very tall, it's had been electrified, then there are the sensors employed on that, then the patrolling, the dogs, sniffer dogs are there, then the depth, defense in depth in layers behind it. Then there is a strike force, that the immediate reaction force and all that, that is available. So they say that even a sparrow now can't go across from here after all these measures that have been taken by India. But yet they manage, okay, if they still manage to go, wearing some, special cap on their heads, how they and why did they select such a tough target? What was the need? If they are only 4 and they were only having these, an odd rocket grenade and Kalashnikov rifle, why should they barge into the strongest defensive locality of that area? Why couldn't they go and hit some soft target or a moving convoy or a vehicle or that kind, and they would have done the job? Why to just jump into a boiling cauldron? And that too into the heart of the 12th Brigade, because 3 battalions are deployed there, and inside the box of the 3 battalions is located the brigade headquarters, and they go in for that, and then they go and strike that most fortified area. So this is absolutely, and then the firing had not even extinguished when they started blaming Pakistan, the media hype and all that. In case of Pathankot, if you remember, that media had carried out hysteria, government for a change had shown restraint and had even agreed for a joint trial. This time, both government and the media straight away started blaming Pakistan, and that was a story that they played up, and they're still playing and blaming them. Why couldn't they think of any other option? Why not, from within the Kashmir? After all, there's a war going on there, and they are carrying out, daily atrocities there, and the kind of they have broken all records of cruelty and atrocities this time against the unarmed, and there could have been a reaction from that side. So why not an option? Why this lone option? Now, if that was an option, now let's weigh both sides, Pakistan first, and then the occupied Kashmiris first. What gains Pakistan would have achieved out of it, or what gain the Kashmiris would have achieved out of it? At a time when, for the first time, we had achieved an edge in diplomacy over India in terms of diplomatic offensive, and the world had begun to take note of Kashmir for the first time because of the atrocities there. The world bodies, the UN, the OIC, the human rights organizations, all that, they all had shown their concern. And now we had begun to, draw benefits out of it. And at a very right time, when we are taking the case of their atrocities to the United Nations, we should go for the suicide. Why? And same goes for the Kashmiris. They are also, carrying out unarmed. They are not picking up arms, unarmed protest. And this is what they are showing to the world, that look at our hapless condition. We are unarmed. We are seeking our right of self-determination. And look at these occupying forces, what kind of cruelty they are doing. So this doesn't fit in anywhere. And that is why it absolutely has backfired, and it has not stood the test of time. So this is what I have to say about it.
False flags are signs of desperation. And clearly, I see India, and we all see India losing influence on their narrative on Kashmir, because clearly the URI attack was to divert everyone's attention from the Kashmir scenario. What's your opinion?
Well, if you look at the history of India, it has justified its occupation of Indian occupied Kashmir by saying that it is part of India, and given various justifications to the world, and also, covered its sins and atrocities in occupied Kashmir by putting up a smoke screen, not allowing outsiders to come in, keeping Pakistan leadership mum, and we following a policy of appeasement, and that is why their narrative have been successful. Now imagine 1991, they, knowing that they had nothing to play as far as Kashmir was concerned, so they picked up the word terrorism, cross-border terrorism in Kashmir, and they kept playing on it. 9/11 then gave them a golden opportunity to play up this very thing. And because new laws had been framed and all that, and in that they successfully, projected the uprising in occupied Kashmir as terrorism and Pakistan as a terror abetting state. This has been the constant narrative and the theme. And then 2008 onwards, they have kept harping on this theme, so much so that if you remember the UFA meeting between the two prime ministers, there it said that terrorism overrides Kashmir dispute. Terrorism comes first and then Kashmir dispute. So this has been its narrative. But what has happened now? They have suddenly come on the back foot, and Pakistan has, achieved an edge over it. And why it has achieved, there are, several factors to it. What is it? Number one, they have spent billions of dollars in this covert war starting 2002. The conflict zones of Fatah, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the Balochistan, and then the Karachi. All these proxies have been used to bleed Pakistan to death. And 60,000 casualties, fatalities, tens of thousands of injuries, $107 billion. All this was done to totally exhaust Pakistan socially, politically, economically, and militarily. And then go in for the military instrument and also, take out the nuclear teeth of Pakistan. All these conflict zones have been reined in successfully by the Pakistan security forces. Now, this is a huge loss for India. So much of money spent and no results. This is, and then CPAC, which is more dangerous now for them as far and then even the nuclear program that is still going on, and they have not been able to stop despite this. A special task given to the RAW and to their Ajit Dawal that at all costs $300 million only specifically given for this job to scuttle CPAC. That has not been done. And then what happens is that the Kashmir suddenly flares up, and they don't know how to justify it, and everyone wants to come in. We are demanding that a special team should go and investigate and see for themselves what is happening and all that, and they should stop the bloodshed, and they are not stopping it. So this is all because of Modi's bungling, and someone rightly says that he's a gift for Pakistan. He will preside over the breakup of Pakistan and the freedom of Indian occupied Kashmir, inshallah. This is my assessment also, and it will happen. In this frame, what tools they have been using? Covert operations, false flag operations, surgical strike, water terrorism, and these political moves like cancellation of the SARC, which they did, effort to isolate Pakistan. All these have been done in the last few months just to, reign in Pakistan. Somehow, caution them, checkmate them from supporting the Kashmir movement. So this has put Pakistan, India in a very difficult position, and they are certainly losing their narrative on Kashmir.
Last question, Brigadier Asif Haroon. India again embarrassed itself by the surgical strike narrative. What really happened?
Well, if you recall, after Mumbai attacks, which they said, it was a huge affair, 166 people died and all that, they have not been able to prove it. But they had built a narrative in a manner, they had showed so much of anger that they said we like to carry out surgical strikes on Pakistan. And they had given two targets. One was the Muridke, where they thought that, the Jamaat al-Dawa, which is the offshoot of the Lashkar-e-Taiba, that they want to strike. And then the so-called terrorist camps in Azad Kashmir. And they had insisted on that. And even Americans had exerted pressure on Pakistan to allow India to do it, to quieten their people who are in great anger, and it is better to diffuse their anger rather than going to war. But of course, then we took a very hard stance, and their air, which had been airborne, they had to then turn once our F-16s were airborne. Now, following in the footsteps of the same concept of surgical strike, and they say that when Pakistan has allowed drone strike, why don't they allow us, the surgical strikes we are carrying out against terrorists, and it's a war on terror. This is what their, logic is. So when URI, backfired and it could not produce results, rather their 18 soldiers, they were not supposed to die. They died as a result of the fire which erupted in the depot, which was in the same vicinity of that unit and brigade headquarters. And the sleeping soldiers of that unit in the tents, they were burnt to death. And most of them were Sikhs. So this was a very big problem for them. Now they wanted to, take a revenge. And that's how, the Modi government put extensive pressure on their army, like they had done in case of the Kargil, to avenge this URI attack and all that, and do something and carry out a surgical strike. The Indian army was reluctant to do so, but so much of pressure was put on it then that they had to again carry out a false flag operation. And this routine cross LOC firing, which they have been doing since early 2015 almost on daily basis, same kind of cross LOC firing on a military post was conducted rather intensively, as a result of which 2 soldiers were martyred and 7 to 8 soldiers were injured. This action they took, and we took an appropriate and befitting action in reaction and killed many more by carrying out similar kind of action on that. But they converted this kind of LOC firing into a kind of a surgical strike inside 3 kilometers deep inside Azad Kashmir, saying that we had attacked the base camp of the terrorists, and 7 launching points had been destroyed. First they said it was an airborne operation by the helicopters. Then they said it was the commando raid that they had gone, and everyone has come, and one lone soldier has gone there and he has been captured and all that. But now even they have submitted and admitted that there was no surgical strike carried out, and they have not been able to provide even an iota, and it has become such an embarrassment for India that it has become a laughing stock in India and in the whole world, making false claim, whereas on ground, because they're not capable of carrying out surgical strike. Pakistan is capable of carrying surgical strike.
Thank you so much, Brigadier Asif Haroon, for being on Tactical Talk. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you, Zain. I hope I did some justice with your questions. Thanks a lot.
This was Brigadier Asif Haroon, a senior geopolitical analyst and also a political commentator. We were discussing the history of Indian false flag operations, where they blamed Pakistan, and also specifically the URI attack. Until the next episode of Tactical Talk, this is Zain Khan. Take care and goodbye.